Did you want to say anything
about
judges? No? Okay. Gentleman in the front row.
Thank you. I'm Jason Pack, an academic at Cambridge, and my expertise is Libya in the 1940s and 50s. So, apropos of 3 questions ago, I'd like to stand what's been said on its head. It's exceedingly important to study the processes of the creation of the 1951 Constitution as lessons in what not to do. So, what we can derive from that are the questions that I'm going to ask you. The primary reason why the kingdom didn't work was federalism and regionalism. And as you know, the federal system failed already within the kingdom period, such that by 1963 it was amended. So the reason that there was federalism is that the British wanted to favor their Cyrenaican clients and Idris and figure out a way that the less populous part of Libya, Cyrenaica, could rule over the more populous part, Tripolitania. Today we have a new regionalism. It's called the militias. And they're the ones who want decentralization and federalism. So what I ask you is, what provisions can there be that take out the drive for federalism and regionalism in the Constitution? And my second and last point is the issue of the rush to the Constitution. Adrian Pelt, who is the real author of the Libyan Constitution, as well as Bevan Blakely and E.A.V. de Canandal, he wanted to rush the constitutional process to fit in line with the first UN resolution of 1949, but then the one of December 1950. And he said explicitly, by insisting that the Constitution be completed by 1951, Tripolitanian demands for revisiting the question of regionalism, there wouldn't be enough time to go back on what had already been postulated before the second UN resolution, because we have to get Libya stood up as an independent state by 1951. So whenever anyone says that there's going to be a real quick deadline to set a constitution, it's because they know that that means what they've done before is essentially going to get grandfathered in, because there's not time to revisit those issues. So could the panel please address the issue of regionalism as a precedent and rushing the Constitution? Whose interests does that favor?
The question of regionalism, I didn't think it's a question in Libya right now. It's no. I'm telling you, this is what I saw on the ground. I mean, I know there are people who are making noises in Benghazi and in the east of Libya over the federal system. But if you look at, for example, the day, I think before yesterday or 3 days ago, when they called for 1 million man march for federalism in Benghazi, only 400 people turned up. And that's obviously indicative of how people feel. Libyans, they feel they are organically connected nowadays, and the federal system isn't really a solution. But touching in the Constitution, I remember this constitutional declaration. I serve in a commission whereby we offer advice and support to the TNC in Benghazi. And this constitutional declaration was made by this committee, the legal section of it, and they presented it to the council. And I remember talking to one of the authors, and I said, "Where did you get this?" He said, "We nicked 80% of it from the old constitution." And I said, "Why so? So why didn't you propose the old constitution? Take out the monarchy and just present it. It's a modern, it's an acceptable one. So to spare us the disagreement, to spare us this luxurious debate that we cannot afford right now. We Libyans now, we have priorities more than constitution. We have injured, we have, we have other problems. We can stick to the old constitution with few amendments, and down the line, maybe 5, 10 years, and then maybe we can improve it or evolve it or do something else."
Mr. Al-Ghamati, briefly, please.
I'll tell you, 2 weeks ago in a lecture in Benghazi, I was there giving this talk, and the issue of federalism came up. And I said to them, those who are promoting federalism, they wanted as a fix for a problem. And I recognize what the problem is. And I say this problem can be fixed by other ways, not just federalism. And the problem is marginalization. And I tell you, I saw marginalization with my own eyes, and I was shocked. When I landed in Benghazi for the first time ever in my life, I didn't see an airport there. I saw like a very, very basic hangar, like what do you call it? A warehouse, a very basic warehouse. It doesn't even resemble an airport. When you drive around the streets of Benghazi, you don't see any infrastructure. Large parts of Benghazi are still just empty. And the same applies to Jdabia, by the way, to Western Mountain, to the south in Fazan. The problem with Libya in the last 42 years, even before that, wherever the government was, the government only looked as far as the city and town it was in, whether it was Tripoli or Beida or Sirte. And the rest of Libya was totally ignored and neglected. So what we need to address is this issue of marginalization. And that can be addressed by so many ways. One of them, obviously, is decentralization and adopting local government, where Libya can be divided into municipalities or regions, and they can elect local councils and they hold them accountable, addressed by giving distribution of wealth and investment in infrastructure and development equally to all and the parts. It can be addressed by developing international airports and connecting people with the rest of the world and within Libya, by developing whole regions that have not been developed before, by streamlining bureaucracy and not force people to travel from Tobruk to Tripoli just to get a piece of paper or a legal document. So the problem is marginalization. We are aware of it, and we should address it in the future, and that will take care of the real issue, instead of people using they think that is the cure for not being marginalized anymore or dominated by just the capital Tripoli. That to me is the solution and the way forward.